Hello. Welcome to Healthy by Choice, the podcast that's here to ignite your belief in what's truly possible for your health and well-being. Hi, I'm Dr. Kerry, and what lights me up is empowering others. My mission has always been to inspire you to take your health seriously and give you the tools to understand your body on a deeper, more meaningful level. In each episode, we'll explore the healing power of nature, the role of real food as medicine, and how intentional movement can restore balance to your body and mind. So whether you're on a journey of prevention, recovery, or simply seeking more vitality, this podcast is your reminder. You hold the power to heal. Thanks so much for joining me. Hi, friends. Welcome back. Thanks for being here with me. Well, this episode is one of those topics that I just don't love. I do not love to talk about it. The topic is pain. And trust me, it's not that I don't care. It's that I'm too sensitive. Like, I don't want to see anyone hurting. And I totally get it that may seem ironic, especially if you believe that chiropractors are pain doctors. But certainly I am not. And this is exactly why I focus on holistic care in my practice. And I've always had a wellness practice. Mostly, I just want to help people prevent being in pain or having pain. I want to keep people from being in pain. That's like really my focus in practice, and has been as a massage therapist, as a personal trainer, and as a chiropractor. And it's my focus. The reason why I get up and work out every day, the reason why I eat the way that I do, the reason why I take the supplements that I do, all is prevention, prevention, prevention. So here's the thing. On the topic of pain, it's really important to remember healthy people have pain. So pain is the body's built-in communication system. Remember how I said when we remove the interference, that helps us keep the body in communication with the brain and the brain in communication with the body, which is basically that signal, right? Or like the red flashing light, which is the pain, is the signal of the brain saying, hey, there's something, between here and there. Which still to this day, no one has ever come in and said, Doc, I have really great news. My body is working. My brain knows that there's something going on. But essentially, that's exactly what's happening. If there's clear communication between your brain and your body part, then your body part will have, no pain. And of course, when we work out, we break down muscle and that builds up. That's also a kind of pain which happens. But stick with me here. Like, the pain should not be there. Pain is a signal. It is a symptom. And depending on what hurts and why, it can be overwhelming. It can definitely be distracting for sure. So, okay, as a topic, pain can just be too generic. The word pain can be too generic because there's such a wide range of what each person can be experiencing, and then to what degree or for how long, and basically what it could be signaling. Remember in the episode Health is Wealth, I quoted, a healthy person has 1,000 wishes, but a sick person has only one. Well, true. Also, the health being the foundation, the fundamental prerequisite for enjoying any aspect of life. Also, people who are experiencing pain can be distracted. Like, many people who have pain are losing sleep or are unable to sleep. And we know that that's torture. It's also very heavy. It's weighing people down. I'm just going to say, as I was pointing out, that is the job of pain. Our bodies are talking to us. Our body wants us to do something different. And, it always has, it always is something to be listened to. It's not there for no reason, is what I'm trying to say. And, it can be an invitation whether this is the invitation you wanted or not, but it's the invitation you may need to have a new relationship with your body. Whether, it's like stop pushing through, stop, I don't know, plowing past. I may be talking to myself here because I am known to do that as well. I live in a body as well, as I often say. But most importantly, I want to say I know pain is real. I really do. I also know that pain is meaningful and that it's just not nothing. It's never nothing. Your body is not just broken or telling you this for no reason. So I want to give you an example. People often come in with low back pain, and in no way would I diminish what that could mean on a scale of 1 to 10. It can often be a 10, and it can be low range of motion. It can be, sharp pains. It can be not being able to roll over in bed, or it can just be, I do not know what happened. My back hurts. So I say, when I'm in practice, I say this is my number one most common lecture. So the hamstrings are a group of 3 muscles. These are the back of your legs, right? Your thighs, your upper thighs and the back of your legs. Your hamstrings are a group of 3 muscles. They attach at the ischial tuberosity. That's the bone on the bottom of your pelvic bowl. You don't need to know that if you're not interested, but it's the bottom of what you call your hip bones, that pelvic bowl. And when the hamstrings pull, they're pulling the entire bowl down. And guess what? You don't feel that, for whatever reason, our design, we don't feel it in the hamstrings and we don't feel it in the bone. We feel it at the top of the bone, which is what we call low back. So I liken this, and I tease people often. I say, essentially we are a marionette. Because imagine if you're making a marionette and you pull at the bottom, of course it makes it tight at what you're pulling on, right? So that whole pelvic bowl may tilt a little bit. It may counter tilt, right? It may start the tilt because you're pulling with the muscles. And who knows what's happening internally in your body, depending on if you sit a lot, stand a lot, if you normally sit, but recently you've been standing, if you decide to go on a 10-mile hike and normally you don't walk at all of the variables that happen before you come into my office, let's just say, and now today is a back pain day, or, it was yesterday, but we got you in here today. I'm telling you, people come in and they can't get in and out of their car, or they can't even get to the office on their own, or they walk in and they're like, this thing has been bugging me. And there's a variation of how involved the hamstrings are, but I'm telling you, with low back pain, the hamstrings are involved. Also, often the psoas muscle, spelled PSOAS, in the front. And in massage school, we learned this psoas, I can walk up the stairs, and that's the muscle that pulls your upper thigh in the front toward your chest, right? So that psoas, I can walk up the stairs. So when those are going agonist, antagonist, one is pulling and the other is supposed to be resting, but instead your system overrides itself and they start pulling. No wonder your pelvic bowl doesn't know which way to go, or it gets, jammed in one direction or whatever, and you feel pain across the low back. It's almost one of the easiest things for me to work on, although I hate to say that because it's not easy for the person coming in. It's not fun, and it can be terribly uncomfortable. But again, it's the simplicity, and sometimes we categorize this as acute pain, meaning, it's recent, it's come on recently, and the same pain a person may have had for a long amount of time, which would feel like saying this is chronic pain because I've had it a really long time. And the truth is we can still relieve that pain pretty easily by working on the muscles, the soft tissue, and getting you some range of motion back in the hip. And it's can roll over in bed again. You can get up and down off the toilet again. You can go for walks again. You can go for long drive. I mean, there is a big relief when we can get people out of low back pain, regardless of how strong the pain was, how high on the pain scale it was, and for how long they've been experiencing it. And um, I know it can be a big deal for people. So that does bring up the point, the categories, right? So acute pain is not bad. It's protective. It helps prevent further injury while the body is healing. It's essentially your brain overriding and saying, don't do that, stop doing that. Typically, we call acute pain a pain with a clear beginning and a clear message. It's like, I know I put out my back when I did this, or I know this began when I did this. And not everybody is clear, but it is essentially an immediate warning system, right? It just shows up and it's like, hey, a sprained ankle, if you pull a muscle, if you have an acute low back, sure, or I don't know, inflammation after overusing it. Like, let's just, like I was saying, if you typically don't do hiking or walking and then you go on a 10-mile hike, well, the body is talking to you. Something just happened. Protect this area. It's one of those things. And if we do use the term acute pain, that usually means short, like weeks to day, or I'm sorry, days to weeks kind of a thing. And it's tied or associated with when there's tissue irritation or inflammation. And then it does improve and heals, within, like I was saying, days to weeks. It does respond well to resting. The rest, ice, elevate, compress. We call that RICE, RICE, rest, ice, compress, elevate. Typically, if you've had a sprained ankle or if you, put out your back, try it. Why wouldn't you? I keep saying, it's definitely the body communicating, just, ow, that happened. Different than chronic pain. So chronic pain is a phrase used that the pain is staying after, like there may have been an injury and the pain just continues to linger. It's usually the kind of thing where it's a generic or unknown cause or just a long-term pain, or I will say longer than expected. And I use expected gently because, like I was saying, it can be months after an injury, but after 3-4 months have gone on, you're pretty much, not you, we call it chronic pain. And that's just ongoing or recurrent. How about that? And it's just one of the ways to say your body has not recalibrated yet. I don't write it off. I refuse to believe anyone is done and this is your new normal, but we haven't figured it out. I often say we haven't found the key to the lock. I know this is the stuff that really wears on people. Of course, when it's long lasting or recurring, or not linked to a certain injury or certain something, it's really hard. I mean, to not understand where it came from or why is really hard on people. And it weighs heavy. And I will say it does not mean the body is broken. It just means your brain or your body or your system is stuck in protection mode. Your system is telling you don't go further. As I was saying, don't push through, and I've been known to push through as well. I know that we think we have to go skiing because the snow's here now, or we think we have to go running because that's how we stay fit, or all of us think we have to, humans, be humaning, dogs kind of don't do that. And then there's actually, like, if you have a central nervous system, like a nervous system pain and override, that's the pain that's driven by like an overprotective nervous system. And that's that hypersensitivity. The volume knob on the pain is just turned up. way up. And that can feel really intense for people, even when there's no reason. I know there are a lot of different diagnoses. It's not in the scope of my practice to use those, but yes, when people have those things that are overwhelming the system, that's more of a nervous system pain. And that is really the body saying, I don't feel safe. And it usually comes with that fatigue, the brain fog, the anxiety, and definitely the low sleep or the no sleep, the people who are just exhausted. I just want to say again, pain is not imagined. People are experiencing pain, and we just have to find the key to the lock. And I really believe that there are different ways to approach it. I personally really always go back to the mental, spiritual, emotional thing, because I know the override in physical is usually mental, spiritual, emotional. That's my personal thing. It's why I am always in therapy and always will be in therapy. And it's also why I see different practitioners, right? I go to acupuncture and massage as well as chiropractic, and I do my daily meditation, my daily prayer, my both working out as in strengthening, but also stretching and all that stuff that I'm really, really committed to. My diet, my exercise, my supplements is because I just don't think my body, I say this again and again. If you're my patient, you know that the body does not lie. My body's not lying to me. It just needs me to listen, maybe differently, maybe in a way I haven't before. The way we move, the way we rest, the amount of stress in our lives, all of that is contributing. So pain is always information. It does not mean that something is damaged. It does not always mean danger. It's just always worth listening to, especially compassionately, because what we want to know is whether or not there's I'm going to say that's the wrong word, a manual fix, right? Can you get a manual therapy? Can you stretch? Can you work this out? Or is rest the right thing? Man, that's another thing. Everyone asks me, Doc, should I ice or should I heat? And I say, yes, the one that feels better. Your body will tell you 100%, you will know. Often it's both. Often the ice will decrease the inflammation and the heat will increase the blood to the area or blood out of the area, and sometimes you need both. Ask your body. When it's cold outside, I can get people to heat more often, and getting people to put ice is often difficult unless it's really hot outside. But pain is the body's way of getting our attention. I've said this so many times also, it starts as a whisper often, and if we don't listen, it gets louder. And that signal is like any other signal. It's like the static on a radio station when you're between stations, it just does get louder. And that is not a diagnosis. I think this is a surprise to people that pain is a symptom. It's not a diagnosis. It's really important to remember that, like if you have a check engine light in your car, it's telling you, hey, pay attention, but it's not diagnosing you. It's not telling you what it is. It's just telling you, pay attention. There's something misfiring here or not connecting. It's also such it's a global relief to the system when the pain dissipates. And I love being a part of that part of people's healing. I just know that when they can take that breath, when they can move back into their body or being back in the body. And speaking of breath, breathing in, just feeling what you're feeling, not ignoring the pain, is often the biggest part of the solution. I'm telling you, between drinking water, taking a nap, and breathing into it, it really dissipates, at least brings down the pain scale considerably, really regularly, and on most people. It's really our body trying to tell us that something is out of balance. It's really important that we listen to it. It's not it doesn't tell us what the cause is or how serious it is. And by the way, how do I want to say this? The amount of pain on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like so much pain you can barely tolerate, is not a direct correlation between how serious it is. Again, back to that analogy of pulling on the hamstrings. There are people who are like, I can't even breathe, it hurts so bad. And then they get their hamstrings to release, particularly if it's a psoas and hamstring working together, which it normally usually is. And the body takes a breath and the people sleep really deeply. And it's just like, that is not the same as saying something really bad is going on here. That's why it's 10 out of 10 pain. There's not a correlation between that. Again, it's just information. Pain is information. It is not a sign that you're a failure or that your body is failing. It's not an indication of how bad it is, even sometimes when it hurts really bad, which unfortunately sometimes the opposite can be true too. It's just true. And one of the biggest misunderstandings about pain is that people think it has to mean injury or damage, but it can come from different places. A muscle guarding, tension, some sort of joint restriction or hypomobility, lack of movement, and your nervous system just being overloaded, just stress. You didn't have, well, number one, I am a person who, if I don't sleep, the next day I have a headache. So that's why I guard my sleep like it's my job, including I'll turn off the alarm and not do my workout, or I won't do all the things that I prioritize and that I say again and again are my most important things. If I don't sleep, I get headaches, and I have the kind of headaches where I'm useless. I certainly don't want to be around people or drive or whatever. So again, not a direct correlation, right? It's a big punishment. The punishment does not fit the crime, they say. And there's that emotional piece, the mental load. Man, just the repetition of strain or the repetition of stressors. If you're driving to work in traffic every day, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And sometimes it's an old injury that has changed a movement pattern. And it is just that combination. It's like, now, I'm going to make this up, but let's say a person is avoiding putting weight or bearing weight on their left knee. Now their right hip is off, or their right ankle and their right hip is off, all because they were avoiding putting weight on their left knee. Sometimes the left knee wasn't even a true injury. It just needed to get stretched out or iced or heated, whatever. And the chain of events that happens is pretty significant. That could even mean now I have low back pain. Now I have neck and shoulder pain because the neck and shoulders go left when the hips go right, all because we need to address that, again, made up scenario, left knee. It's not something we should ignore. When it goes to a whisper, your body's saying, then it gets louder, and now it's louder. And sometimes we don't get the gift of louder. We just get the gift of, oh, now it's hip and knee and ankle and shoulders, and now I can't sleep. And, this is, seriously, pain is on a spectrum in every possible way of the definition, which still does not define it as an emergency, but it is a gentle nudge. Well, it moves from a gentle nudge to a warning, to a yell, to a please change something that you're doing, or do change something that you're doing. And that there are pains that can be red flags for sure. I think one of the things to take very seriously is global pain, or pain in more than a couple of areas, is often diet. It's inflammation. Inflammation in your system comes from your diet. And I can't say enough, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you got, period. And I preach and I preach and I preach. Stop eating wheat. Stop eating dairy. Stop eating crackers and bread and all the stuff. Or don't, but you're inflaming your system. And I don't mean you. I'm sorry to say that. the body is not designed to take on these inflammatory foods that we have in our normal American diet. That standard American diet really is sad. It really is inflammatory. And if you're eating food out of a box at all, it's inflammatory. And one of the craziest things is mostly it's the drinking, anything you're drinking that's not water, anything out of a can or a bottle. I mean, look at the ingredient, flip it around and look at the ingredients. Those are your inflammatory ingredients. I think one of the biggest arguments, I didn't realize, I've never picked up something that's a diet in my entire life and drank it. But I do know that people who are trying to diet, meaning lose weight, will drink diet products. And I was in my young 20s, way before I was studying this, when I learned that the amount of fake sugar that was allowed in diet products, and mind you, this is the 80s, so this has all slipped way in past then. It was rat poison equivalent. And, this is just truth. I didn't make this up. The people who are experiencing random pain take the diet out of their body and the pain would go away. And in my life, someone I knew was having shoulder pain. I just said, hey, I just learned this thing. One of my closest friends, he stopped drinking diet soda and he stopped having this random shoulder pain that was coming from nowhere. He hadn't had an injury. There wasn't something going on. And I was like 20 at the time, so I never thought twice about it. I just thought people knew that. But as I've gone on to see so many people try so many diets and making not gaining weight a priority, which I get. Nobody wants to carry around more weight than they want. Somehow they've bought into diet being okay. Scream it from the mountaintops. If it says diet, do not purchase it, do not consume it, do not come near it, do not pass go. Flip that can around and read the ingredients. If you can pronounce them, there's not one ingredient in there that you should have. Not one, especially ever once, let alone more than once ever in your whole entire life, in your body ever. Facts. And then add to it random pain. It's like, you're having random pain because those are neurodisruptors. That is just a fact. Going back to the nervous system pain, that's what that is. It's a neurodisruptor. And since I'm off on my tangent here, it's worth saying a couple of other things. Whenever someone has, I'm going to say one elbow pain, but it's two elbow pains, that's always systemic, right? As a chiropractor, we go to the spine, we go to the nerves. Also, you got to go to the systemic stuff. It's diet. I'm here to tell you, it's diet. I don't like it either. I would eat bread if I could. I can't tolerate bread. I love bread, but I don't want my knees to hurt. So, the fact is I eat very little bread whenever, especially if it's not homemade. But the point is, I lost my train of thought about, so another thing that I was a massage therapist for many years, and people would come in and they would start to have those cysts like under their skin. And sometimes doctors would tell them that it was a fatty tissue. And at first, I would get kind of like freaked out about it because I didn't know what a fatty tissue, I mean, I was in my young 20s. And then it was pretty common. And then someone I knew who was really close to me went to his medical doctor, and the medical doctor said, well, that comes from eating deli meat. And so here I was in my young 20s realizing, the way they process that to make it a deli meat, that's not something we're meant to eat a lot of, but it stores in our body in those cysts, in those pockets. And that can sometimes happen in a joint, which can be joint pain. And I just want to share that because I would love for you to stop eating what's causing pain. I mean, nobody wants to cause pain directly, clearly, and especially if you could take it out of your diet. any neurodisruptor is an input that interferes with your nervous system. And if it's something that we already know about, all the sugars, anything that turns to sugar in the body. So that's the thing with wheat and dairy. It turns to sugar in the body, and the way that your body processes it is storing it essentially and increasing your insulin and all the things that sugar does. Also, it's inflammatory and it hurts. Yeah, I don't like it either. And anytime more than one joint hurts, it does not have to be something that is typical for other people. You could be eating something that you think is healthy because for whatever reason you think it's healthy. Really common in Eastern philosophy is that bananas are inflammatory because they're mucus building. And I took bananas out of my diet a long time ago, and it's true. If I have a half a banana, I kind of get that in the back of my throat, and it makes me recognize, boy, am I glad that that's not in my joints. I kind of feel like I can conclude my lecture for now, but you get it. The point being, I don't want you to have pain. I really, really don't want to have pain myself, and I truly do not want you to have physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual pain. There's enough in the world. Like, take good care of yourself, love yourself, drink water, keep your stress low, get a lot of sleep, but also do the simple things to keep the pain, out of your life. I promise you it's worth it. I promise you. And I love you. I only say all of these things that you don't want to hear because I love you. Until next time.